like Gentleman's Gazette at your store, and I'm like, what do you mean your store? Like, I mean, this is Gentleman's Gazette. It just happens to be
Richards.
Early 80s, mid 80s, 1960s. I'm like, it's all classic menswear is classic menswear.
Yeah.
And whether it's new or old.
We're here at Richard's Fabulous Finds in Chicago. Richard, cheers.
Shookas.
Oh.
To fashion.
Cheers. Thank you for having us.
Oh, sure.
It's a wonderful store here. Can you tell us a little more about how you got into clothing?
Oh, God. How far back do you want to go? You want to go pre-80s?
Sure.
Early 80s, high school. I was in the library, and I said, you've got Vogue, you've got Harper's Bazaar. I'm like, I said, where's the menswear magazine? No GQ? There you go. So I was always into fashion, even from the small little town of Savannah, Illinois, 3,000 people, Mississippi River.
All right.
I always loved fashion. I wasn't necessarily menswear focused, but as clothing wise, and I thought, well, you got to offer it to everybody. I mean, even out here in the sticks, you know, men want to look nice too. And that's kind of the start.
I mean, and obviously you were into it, but
oh yeah,
why?
I lost best dressed in my high school by one vote.
So one vote
because we had a guy move in from Chicago because Savannah, Illinois is Army Depot, and my senior year they moved a guy in from Chicago, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna? So I lost. But you know, the best part is, you know, I end up going to prison, so what do I care? So it's all good. I'd rather lose by 1 point. I've never been in jail, so it's all good.
So, you know, I think most men today don't have to wear suits anymore.
Nope.
So why does a suit still matter in 2025?
Well, I think it's about elevating your style. And I think, what's that phrase? Dress for the job you want, not for the job you have. And it's going to sound trite. Do you remember ZZ Top from back in the day? The brand ZZ Top?
And it had the beards, right?
Every girl's crazy about a sharp dressed man. And I will have to say, in the 10 years I've been in business, when I put a groom-to-be, a husband, a boyfriend, when he comes out of my dressing room and we put him in the shirt and the tie and we got the suit and stuff like that, the amount of women that go, ooh, that's fabulous. I've done my job.
So what are you wearing here today?
Oh, this is actually a Bacharach 1980s, 90s
Like,
piece.
was it Burt Bacharach?
No, Bacharach's was actually the company that they owned, Oak Tree, Nine West Shoes. They had just, it was a mall brand back in the day. But when I saw this online, I was like, you know, that looks like Ralph Lauren's 2024 collection in the brown. And so I bought it.
Yeah,
so here I am.
It's a nice fabric. It has it's like a worsted flannelly kind of
almost
fabric.
But again, what we all know, well-constructed garments, the giveaway that this is not an expensive suit is, you know, the stripes don't match.
Yes.
Exactly.
So what's the shirt? What's the tie? What are the shoes?
Old 90s Brooks Brothers. This is a Robert Talbot.
Oh, yeah.
Used to make amazing brocades. So this is a gift, 1920s. Stuff like that, and a little pocket poof, and there you go.
What shoes are you wearing?
This is Johnston Murphy.
Old Johnston Murphy.
Leather sole. We all know now they do everything with rubber sole, which I absolutely hate. So, yeah. So, but it's all vintage. None of it's new. It's all been loved before. And, you know, as I tell people, I say, you don't have to buy new to get the good stuff. You can always buy the secondhand and gently loved and vintage, and you're going to get better quality. I'd say, to me, anything pre-2000s is always made better. Always made better. Yep.
So, you know, your store is interesting because you have like, you know, 60s stuff, you have 70s, you have actual, if we go over here, you know, there's like a, what is it, like a punch bowl, like a fondue pot. So it's an eclectic mix of, you know, little grandfather Glock, hygrometer style stuff.
Barometer. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, barometer, that's right, exactly.
Bulova, we know Bulova.
Yep. You have hats, you have like college scarves. What was the vision when you started the store?
Well, you know, I I vision my shop being what a haberdashery would have been in the day. And people always think, what was a haberdashery? I'm like, anything a gentleman need in one place. You could get your luggage to your underwear. You could get it all in one spot. And the reason I love the decor and I do in my shop, because when women come in, they're not necessarily happy that it's all menswear.
Yeah.
I said, but a clock knows no gender.
That is true.
Barware knows no gender.
So how are the vintage underwear sales in 2025?
It's a slightly creepy thing, but it's always it's always fabulous and very, very profitable, because I mean, it's the insane amount of money that you can get for an unused pair of BVDs from the 60s online.
Okay.
And those will always go to my my eBay page. So yeah, it's but my pajamas and robes do extremely well. I mean, it's just, right person, right time, right size.
So let's walk through the store, because you've quite an eclectic mix here. I think, what is it right here? That's like the stage that you see that when you come in. You just have quite a few suits in here.
Yep.
And do you like, I only buy bespoke suits, I only buy American things?
Nope.
Or how do you select the items you display?
After all my years in menswear and high-end menswear, from Bloomingdale's to Neiman Marcus, I call it bells and whistles. What makes this more than any piece that you can find mass produced at any thrift store? This here, I mean, if you look at really close, of course, in the lighting, it's going to be really hard to see. There's a teal and a magenta stripe on the pinstripe.
Yep. And it's like, this is a pinstripe and this is a chalk stripe.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool to see that mix.
But will they ever do that fabric today? No.
Like
Why?
that, yeah.
It's more expensive to do.
Yeah.
This suit here, old Hart Schaffner marks, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah.
But when's the last time you saw a suit with a matching belt?
Yes.
Exactly.
I think the last time I saw it actually
Was
an Old Berry suit. They had
and in
like
the
a
50s, it was very popular to do that. I mean, 1960s classic overcoat. And of course, you can't see it, but there's a red undertone to this when you get up close. So it's original shark skin. So, even though, honestly, if you went into a modern store, you could think this is all modern if somebody didn't tell you.
Yeah.
But that's the point. Better construction, better fabric, and I guarantee you both of these suits are probably canvas versus glue.
Yes. When you touch it,
because
feel it.
That's the construction of it.
Then you have some overcoats here. This is more like faux fur. And,
politically correct fur. Nobody said we're going to throw paint on you with these, but very popular in the late 60s and early 70s. The car coat, I like to call it, because it's a 3/4 that you can kind of get in and get out and stuff like. But yeah, but still very, very popular.
But I mean, nothing is as green as used clothing, right? Even if you had like an actual fur-lined coat, it's already made. The animals are dead. You're just reusing something. Well, you're not making something new.
You took it at its prime, is the way I look at it. Yeah.
I got some trench coats over here.
Yep. Classic. There's
and you have like a Burberry in there.
Yep.
Right? Oh yeah, here a Burberry extra large.
Yep.
$245, single-breasted though. I like that.
And what's nice about the old ones back in the day,
it's a really soft fabric. It's really nice.
Right. Microfiber, I think, on that one probably.
Microfiber,
yeah. But the older ones, especially the trenches, the liners would zip out. So for spring, summer, when you needed something cooler, you could take it out. When the fall, winter would come, you could add it. And then, but who does that today? Yeah, vintage stuff.
Look at this fabric here, right? It's beautiful.
Flecked tweed.
The flecked tweed, and you even those thicker yarns, they have individual stuff in there.
1950s. Yeah. Not Donegal tweed, though everybody calls Donegal tweed flecked tweed. I said, no, Donegal is made in Donegal.
Yes.
There's a huge difference between the two. So please just call it a flecked tweed. It's not made in Donegal. You chimed in on this one earlier, right?
Yes, I thought, it's the fabric is just amazing.
70s does the 30s, though, because if you go into 30s tweeds, and it's like they had, I call them almost like nervous tweed. Yeah. Because if you look at it and you zoom in real close, you're like, ooh, that's a lot of pattern.
What's happening here? Yeah,
exactly. But that just shows the recycle of menswear.
But it's also a super short sleeve, right? So when you're
that's
when you're buying, you have to kind of be really kind of aware of what's going on here.
I tell a lot of guys, especially with the sport coats and suits, if you see less than 4 buttons on the sleeve, it's been altered.
Yes.
Because industry standard is 4, right?
I know, but sometimes if you have
not coats,
country suits or stuff you had different stuff, and then here, you got your little bowls and 60s, 70s inspired stuff.
Yep.
So you just see something and buy it, or how do you?
When in doubt, Richard, just get it. Because if you love it, at some point somebody else is going to love it. And in 10 years in business, I can't think of anything in my shop that's actually been here that long. But you know,
look at this. It almost looks like a silk trench coat, right?
Very 90s.
Very 90s.
Yep.
Flannel
40s,
stuff.
double-breasted.
Twill.
1950s twill. Yep.
This is an
80s,
unusual
80s flannel.
overcoat color for men.
Yeah.
I also love that you just specialize in men because most vintage stores have, you know, a small men's section as kind of an add-on.
And you want to hear a funny? It's always in the left-hand corner in the back of the shop.
Why is that?
Mark my words. It just is. Like any shop I've been into over all these years, when I go in, I'm like, where's the menswear? It's in the back, in the corner, on the left.
The left.
So we're like the poor forgotten stepchild that nobody wants to talk about. Isn't that brilliant?
Where do you think you'd wear this?
You know what I've always wanted is a formal, is a tan tuxedo, and they were very popular in that area. So I don't know if you could pull that off as a tux, but
I mean, it has the
shawl
shawl
lapel,
collar.
exactly.
I think, and look at how interesting this pocket is. Isn't it? The shape is it's kind of angled inwards.
Yep.
That's highly unusual.
And it's a 46. When do you find that size in that era, other than at a vintage store? Because that's almost impossible. Yeah.
Yeah, it almost has this kind of a cavalry twill texture of it. Wow, look at these belt loops too.
I know.
That's
unusual for that era, right?
Very unusual.
Yeah.
Double pleated.
Yeah, neat stuff.
So your store is very nice and organized. Everything is sized. You say dry cleaned, repaired.
Cleaned, repaired.
So do you repair it? Do you sit there doing it?
Well, I have a tailor. That when I send it to my dry cleaner, I'm like, I said, if it's missing a button, you better find it in the pocket. You know, that's because it's important. Because the one thing I love to say about it, men as a sex, they'll be in here on Wednesday and like, oh, when's your event? Saturday. So you have no time for repairs and you have no time for dry cleaning.
Yeah.
Richard has already done that for you. So
that's great.
When you shop, and again, I think we talked about that earlier. So feel free to use this one. Richard's shop is brilliant. It's beautifully decorated, and it doesn't smell like dead people. Why? Because I've dry cleaned and laundered everything in my store.
Yeah, it's really,
extra value.
It's really unusual for a vintage store. There's no smell of a vintage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
None of the garments have that. So yes, good job. Because I know sometimes you dry clean it and it still smells.
Well, and there's a vodka clean system that we've used.
We did a whole thing, like spray bottle with vodka.
Yeah, and then of course, and if you can bake it in the sun, I mean, I've had rolling racks of clothes that I've left out days and days on my patio here and behind the shop just to kind of like
the wind helps.
Yeah,
vodka,
that cooks it
wind,
out.
It's really helpful.
Yeah.
And somebody also have like cool accessories here. These Trafalgar suspenders here. How much are they going for?
$75.
Which is, you know, a good price. These are kind of collector's items.
Oh, yeah. And they still do them year after year after year. They come out with a new collection. So the men of means and men that are the collectors, you know, they love.
So this
Trafalgar.
is the Rottweiler cast iron toilet paper holder.
If you're going to have a dapper house, you need to have a dapper bathroom.
There you go. At least a guest bathroom. I can see that.
Right,
That's
exactly.
really nice.
Yeah.
So,
He's at 150. Rottweiler cast iron.
So your house, is it decorated like your store?
You know what? My intention was, but the condo I bought was in a 1990 build, and so unfortunately it's just too small, too low, two ceilings. It's a little more mid-century modern than most people would think. I mean, of course, I'm still a Ralph Lauren fan. Too dark, too heavy, too big. So yeah,
nice.
but so I've got my elements. You know, it's a little mid-century mat, and I have majolica pottery, and you know, we introduced a yellow and olive green color scheme. So yeah.
So talking about Ralph Lauren, show me your favorite Ralph Lauren pieces you have here right now.
Oh, well, of course. You know, anytime you go into his outerwear.
It's kind of like field jackets, yeah.
Of course. Made in Italy.
Yeah.
And that's the way you know it's not modern.
Yes.
I mean, I still love Ralph, but so much of the new stuff is made in China.
Yeah.
And so,
especially in the polo line.
And you're going to get all of your bells and whistles. You're going to get your detailing.
But you get the kind of some lighter, softer fabrics.
Exactly.
Compared to the English ones. Belted back.
Yeah. And elbow patches. I mean, you're going to get, when you shop vintage, especially for Ralph, and what I love about 80s and 90s Ralph Lauren, it made me think about it, he would have been in the trenches. This was reproved by the man.
Yeah.
New, I'm sure there's probably look boards and there's fashion. Maybe they run through
Yeah.
like the pieces that he's going to choose for his collection. But I don't think he's quite as involved. And that's why I think like within the last probably 5 years, the collectability for 80s and 90s Ralph Lauren, as an example, and I don't have one to show you. I had a red piqué short sleeve polo sticks, helmet, screen print. I was at Ralph Lauren buying some shorts. And the guy was like, oh my, we have vintage Ralph Lauren on the rack. I pulled up the exact same shirt in blue, $400. I had mine at $55.
It's a cool brand though, if you can, go and say, we're selling our own vintage here now, right?
Yeah.
Iconic.
Well, he's been in business for 50 years.
Yeah.
I mean, God love him.
And there's a lot.
He's a brilliant man.
What else you like from the man?
From man, and then I have some of his knitwear. Of course, I mean, and this is the older stuff, so you can just squeeze that, feel the yarn on that.
And if you look closely here too, it has this, it's the fiber dye.
Yeah.
So you get that red tone, the green tones.
Yep.
From afar, it looks like green, but then when you come closer, you can wear this with brown. It will always be very harmonious.
Yep.
Beautiful.
And his old school. And when you buy his modern knit, feel that. See, even you can squeeze it. You can see they have the yarn per space.
The weight.
Too, yeah.
How many plies?
Again, yeah.
Are in there.
It's brilliant. Yeah, he's really. I mean, unfortunately, I just literally sold. I had a 3-piece tweed, fleck, double-breasted with a collared 3-piece, double-breasted with the waistcoat. So one of my favorite clients, Dr. Yates, his wife was like, "Oh my God, I don't know what to get him for Christmas." I was like, "I got the suit. I got the suit." He so excited, he literally put it on like as soon as I got it and sent me a video, and I was like, "Well, see, that's why I do what I do."
You also have like robes and stuff.
Yeah.
Is that a popular vintage item?
Very well, and this a couple of months ago was packed from front to back.
Okay.
Because if you think about it today, where do you go to get a robes and pajama set?
New in Lingwood or so in London, they're quite expensive.
And even when I worked at Neiman Marcus, I mean, we had our Neiman Marcus brand, but we didn't have any branded. Like, I was like, though, again, speaking of Ralph Lauren, I mean, he does do like great traditional, pajama robe sets and stuff year to year.
Like something like this, right?
Yeah. Well,
it's,
when you get a purple label, Italian silk,
So, I mean, with silk robes, I'm always like, they're so delicate. You pull threads quickly.
Yeah.
Something to keep in mind. It's a nice material on the skin, but also like silk can discolor when you kind of sweat and stuff like that. So I'm not a fan of all silk ropes for personal stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, anything you get against it is going to call it. But because the woman from Charvet, Neckwear, when she came to Neiman Marcus, she was like, Richard, she goes, you never cut silk frays, you burn them. You ever heard that?
Well, it was interesting. I was in Yorkshire, and they're very serious about there's weaving and there's finishing. In Italy, oftentimes, it's all done in the same house, but they have fabric weavers and they have finishers. And the finishers had a machine, and they told me it cost $250,000, and all it did was burn off the fibers,
the fray
of the wool. Right? It's just
well, even silks.
Yeah.
Because she would always say, she goes, Richard, if you went in there with the scissors, you might have hooked it, and when you go, she took a lighter and she was like, burn it off. So like, and as you probably saw, the little fibers that were off of there, I would never cut that. I would get a lighter and just burn that off, because it also cuts it off, so you won't fray again. So yeah.
And I mean, you mentioned, I mean, you have cool stuff. This is like I think a Brooks Brothers kind of tartan, right? Could be like a pair of Christmas pants. Or like here, you talked about Ralph Lauren. I saw this one. This is like, I would say this is 80s Ralph Lauren, right?
Definitely.
I mean, look
tab.
Look how full cut it is.
With your brace buttons built in. Yep. Ready to go.
Do you think it's going to come back in that width?
Well, I think the waist is the width, the highest that you're going to get. You're never going to go back to 40s and 50s, like 2 inches above the belly button. I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Yeah.
Hollywood trousers / drop loop. So I think that's where we're going to go. Yeah, and I definitely think we're there. Because that PTO Mall, which was just like, 2 weeks ago, every designer was showing that baggy, sack cut, full cut, and And I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. Because no matter how big you get in the middle, a full cut trouser looks good on everybody.
Yeah. And you know, we talked about like Hollywood trousers.
Look at that drop loop.
They stood out to me, right? It's like basically you don't have a waistband at all.
But look at that zipper.
Yeah.
It's from here all the way to there.
Up, yeah.
So you know it's where it's going to hit. So when I tell a lot of guys when you're buying vintage and when you're looking at vintage, it's not about when people look, say, inseam. I was like, ask them how long the zipper is. Because that's really going to tell you where you're going to wear it on your waistline.
Yeah.
But and I made the mistake of saying that to a customer the other day. I said, there's a fine line between Ricky Ricardo and Fred Mertz. You got to be ready. Because if you wear them too high and you have a little bit of frontage,
yeah. See,
it's you either going to love it or you're going to hate it. It's up to you.
I wear mine like about an inch above the belly button now, and it's hard to go back.
Yeah.
Because once you put in a different pair of pants, you're like, ooh, this is uncomfortable. This is not nice.
Now once
and
you
it slides
adjust
down. So it's like, once you're used to it, and it's probably the same when you come from like low-rise trousers and you go up, you're like, ooh, what is this?
But you notice the one thing that changes whenever you put somebody in a traditional trouser.
What is that? They stand up more?
Because it makes you straighten your spine. Because you nip them under the ribs, which is your natural waist. So the other day I had a woman come in. She goes, honey, you look so handsome. And I said, you notice his posture is different? She goes, yeah, why is his shoulders back like that? And I went, that's a traditional trouser that you're on the waist. So, and always, so, if you figure on 40s and 50s movies, might not have been handsome, but I would say proper posture is sexy. And when you have a trouser that pulls you in at your natural waist, you're always going to stand taller.
So we're standing here at probably your favorite rack, is that right?
Well, the 80s double-breasted peak lapel has come back. And so the return of the pleated trouser, again, first in the 40s, then in the 80s. Now we're doing it again. We're back to the double.
So walk us through the 80s hallmarks.
80s hallmark, slightly shorter, slightly narrower.
Lapel, lower
and
board.
Lower.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And
Shoulder
a lot
pads.
of times, not as much. Believe it or not.
But still there.
But not like the 90s. The 90s we went extended Armani.
Football players.
Yeah, with a roll. But 6 buttons, 1. And that to me is the signature of the 80s. 2, 4, 6, like our young friend here. 2 button, 2, 4, 6, 1, signature 80s.
Nice.
Not that they didn't do it in the 40s, because I've watched movies. They did do it, not as often. Yeah.
And then over here we got your 70s.
The disco rack. Ew.
Yeah. For that party that you have to go to.
Well, TV movie. I had somebody over the summer like disco wedding. We gotta wear disco for the wedding.
Yeah.
And then last season I did. It's called a Duster, HBO Max.
Mm-hmm.
It will come out this season. All 70s. And they were like, Richard, we're in New Mexico. We need 70s polyester suits. And I'm like, I got you. That's why this rounder is so thin. Because I was like, oh, how many units? 300 units.
Nice.
Poly knit, baby. How you doing?
And here you got like clip-on bow ties.
19 and big in the 50s. And the thing that I tell people a lot of times, sometimes the designs and the fabrics and the detail, if you did that as a self-tie bow tie, you wouldn't be able to do that. So, and I don't mind. I don't mind them on the hinge.
Yeah.
It's just the ones that do the clip over. Ooh, no, can't do it.
Well, I like it. You also like sort of thematically. Here you have more like of the, traditional club ties.
Embroidered, yeah.
Yeah, embroidered.
They sell very well. Ralph Lauren was not the originator. He's just the pollinator.
Yeah, totally. And then here, these are all size 242 long jackets.
Everything is sized in my shop, yeah.
Oh, wow. And here you got all your tie collections. Walk us through that here.
Oh, when I sell a suit from a certain decade, I generally like to kind of like, okay, if we're going to do it, let's lean into it. So if it's 20s, 30s, if it's 40s with the wide lapel, if you go into the 50s, 60s skinnies. Because again, I fall into that line where I'm like, okay, the blade of your tie should fit into your lapel.
That's like this tie, for example, would you say, yeah?
It's 40s.
It's almost there, right? So you can kind of...
But see, we did the suit again in the 80s.
Yeah.
Now, the body on that tie is going to be quite a bit shorter. because this is from this era, because that pant would have sat above the belly button. 20s and 30s ties are even shorter. Why?
The rise was higher.
No, because almost all suits were three-piece.
You wouldn't see it on the waistcoat, yeah. And I mean, you
didn't need your tie to go all the way down to the buckle because nobody's going to see but this much of it. So that's why I separate them out. And then I did run into a whole batch of, check it out, crepe back, 1920s, 30s, dead stocks. Right? Approved by Marc Chevalier. You're familiar with Marc Chevalier?
From
Art Deco Society in LA?
In Paris, yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
And he was shocked. He goes, how'd you find that? I said, Mark, I do live in a city of almost 3 million people. I'm like, I'm bound to find.
Well, and sometimes you just come across it, but it's like, do you know what you have when you see it?
Exactly.
Because a lot of people don't know.
Well, and that's the hardest part about when I would go to show this to somebody and they go, that just looks like a striped tie because it's still so modern.
Yeah.
Now, I could show you, like, obviously, with the tag and the construction, it's different.
Colonial cravats, always correct.
Yep.
The neckwear dress of America. I mean, it's just
before
funny
they
see
started calling it a necktie.
These
cravat.
These marketing promises, right? It's so funny because the old ads oftentimes like, this is the best necktie you will ever have. They're bold statements that today would not work. But back then, apparently, it did work.
Yeah. Well, it's all in the marketing. So you have your 20s, 30s super short. So you have your slightly longer 40s, 50s. And then you go, of course, into your 50s, 60s skinnies, which is going to be your modern length. And the young gentleman that's shopping in my store, that's usually his favorite section. Of course, your double wide 70s. And then you go into bow tie world, which I have a mix of anything from the 30s all the way up to the 80s. And it's...
Do you buy these individually or in bulk?
When I buy them?
Yeah.
Oh, by the bag.
Nice.
People can't.
And then you sort through?
Yeah, I mean, and then, because, and we have an amazing, over here on Division in Chicago, a men's rehab center.
Yeah.
And anything that doesn't work in my store, clothes, neckwear, etc., we find it at home. So.
See, I love this pattern and this color. Sadly, it's kind of done, but I think, what would you call this color?
Oh, gosh.
It's like an orange.
It's not quite orange.
Brown.
It's not quite a taupe. It's
cool.
Orangey taupey kind of. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. See, and again,
Christmas
when you go into those 70s, does the 30s.
Yeah. Well, you can see the difference in the blade, right? It's
but
huge.
But as an example of like if this was narrower like this, I could say okay, that's 30s. But because it's a double wide, kudos to the man that can tie that, because man, that's a lot of finger pushing to get through the back of your bow, right?
Absolutely.
I mean,
I can tell this is a labor of love here that you built up, and kudos to you for helping Chicago men to dress up and get woven leather belt suspenders.
My original goal was to show men how to wear vintage in a modern way, and then I fell into the TV movie and the lifestyle people, because honestly, that front rounder back in my first year, I was like, oh, absolutely not. Those shoulder pads, those pants up to here, I can't do it. 70s, absolutely not. We're not going to do that. I want to show guys. So, but that's why, and now everything is broken down into, why are you shopping with me today? Oh, you're a young man. You want to wear vintage in a modern way. Let's look at rounder 2. We can't put you in the first rounder because the shoulders are going to be too much. That pants going to be too much. We just can't do that.
Yeah.
So.
And even if
there's so many elements to there's vintage in a modern way, there's like vintage lifestyle people, there's a TV movie people, there's costumers and people that want like the weird funky stuff. But so I try to accommodate most.
Right.
Yeah.
And you got the Kavanaugh hat, the opera hat. Very nice. This is in good shape too.
Absolutely. Yeah, if he wore it once, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, and you can touch the coil on the inside, so you can actually kind of collapse this one and keep it at the opera. And then when you're ready to wear it,
put it under your chair.
You pop it up.
If you go to our Niederlander theater downtown Chicago, Niederlander, they all have the original seating, and if you put your hand underneath,
you can.
And I can't guarantee you're not going to run into some gum, but you will feel the rails where you would actually have slid your opera hat underneath your chair.
Very nice.
See?
Last question.
Yeah.
Apart from Richard's fabulous finds, what is your favorite vintage store?
Cohort of mine, Good Form. He's here in Chicago. He does amazing, amazing menswear. He's a little more workwear and oriented. And in New York, of course, Crowley Vintage. He's one of my personal favorites. Breyer Vintage also does amazing. I kind of like gear towards like the ones that offer tailored clothing, suits, etc. And my good friend Field Vintage here in Chicago. He does his markets. He's on Instagram and Facebook and Etsy. He's another local guy. So it's like, and we have a great camaraderie. I'm like, there's competitiveness, but there's really no like that. So if I can recommend one to one and then the other one, it's like that. And he does a certain style that I don't do. I find for him. He finds suits. He finds for me. So, we share the love.
Thank you.
And that's the great thing about Chicago. Awesome. Always looking out for our peeps.
Awesome. Thank you, Richard.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.